Good morning and welcome to another EPALE online discussion. My name is Andrea and I will be your host for today. Our discussion today will tackle the topics of sustainability and adult learning. Are we moving beyond green skills? As you all know, sustainability in education and training has risen to a significant topic in the last few years. It's been so important on the agenda that the European Commission is dedicating a whole transition, the green transition, about it. And education, and especially adult education, have a big role to play in making sure that we live in a more sustainable world, both in terms of environmental sustainability, but also in terms of social sustainability. And today, with a couple of guests of honor, we wanted to tackle this topic to understand what can adult learning and education do for this transition. How do we learn? How do we teach green skills? And are green skills enough, or should we tweak them somehow? I know that the topic is very important, so I do not want to steal too much time from our discussion, and I wanted to introduce straight up our two guests. Today with me we have Katharina Wiese from the European Environmental Bureau, and we have Barbara Archesso, who's a member of the EU Working Group on Sustainability in School Education. So a warm welcome to both of you, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know that there have been also comments on EPALE already before the start of the discussion, which means that this topic is something that spurs a lot of interest. So let me start straight up and ask Barbara the first question. Barbara, you're a member of the working group of the European Commission on Learning for Sustainability. This working group looks at everything that is there to learn about sustainability and linking education with the green transition in a way. So within this framework, can you help us define what green skills are?
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you for this invitation to this interesting discussion. I would like to start with the definition provided by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization about the green skills. They are the knowledge, abilities, values, and attitudes needed to live in, develop, and support a sustainable and resource-efficient society. So I would like to introduce an assumption. The need to transition towards more environmentally sustainable modes of production and consumption has become imperative, and therefore adults need to develop green skills. This is my first thought. These skills obviously include technical knowledge, which is also mentioned in other definitions of green skills. Technical knowledge, expertise, and abilities are part of the green skills because they enable the effective use of green technologies and processes in professional settings. But green skills are more than that. We should consider not just technical green skills, so those skills that are needed in some specific job places related to the so-called green jobs. I'm just to mention a few, like energy, the energy sector, or water and waste management, and so on. Green skills are used in all professions, and green skills are needed in our whole life. So the European Union's Council recommendation on learning for the green transition and sustainable development clearly indicates that green skills are needed to be considered in a lifelong learning perspective. So from childhood on. And these skills are developed not merely for the correct application of green technology, but also to foster the green transition of our society as a whole. So they draw on a range of knowledge, values is a key word, and attitudes to facilitate environmentally sustainable decision making. This is important to underline, both at work and in life. The Green Comp defines a sustainability competence as empowering learners to embody sustainability values and embrace complex systems in order to take or request action that restores and maintains ecosystem health and enhances justice, generating visions for sustainable futures. So I think, especially for adults, this is a very important issue to underline. So the strengthening the values, embracing the whole life, taking decisions in different contexts belonging to our lives. So yeah, I hope I gave you at least an initial idea of what green skills are also for adults.
Yes, this is absolutely true. Thank you very much, Barbara. This is a very good start to our discussion. I think what really resonated with me was the empowerment of learners to live a more conscious life. So we always say that learning is for personal and societal development. So here we are. This is certainly very relevant. Let me turn to Katie, because Katie works for the European Environmental Bureau. That is an organization that works not so much on education, but rather on environment. But green skills have gained so much prominence in today's policies in Europe that, of course, the European Environmental Bureau is also looking at them. And Katie, from your perspective, why are green skills important to a green and just transition?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrea. And first of all, also thanks a lot for having me, because we might not be the usual suspects in or as being part of your webinars, but I think it's always super interesting and also important that we exchange. And so green skills are very vital for the green and just transition. I mean, first of all, because we need to transform our economies, and this, of course, require also new skills. And this is especially important in a context where only, I think there was a survey where only half of the people believe that they actually have, or that the current skills allow them also to contribute to the green transition. So that's already the context we live in. And that also means that, of course, a particular focus on reskilling, upskilling, education and training is very important and will also be key. And especially also if you consider that some of the green jobs that we need require a large trained workforce. And here I'm thinking about solar implementation or building renovations, retrofitting. And we also all know that there's already quite a gap in skilled workers for these areas, at least in Germany, where I'm from. But as Barbara already said, for us, green skills is also so much more. It's about education and knowledge. And we actually also subscribe to the UN definition that she mentioned before. And this altogether means that for the green transition, first of all, we need to have a better and more granular understanding of the actual skills needed for the green transition. So we need to look into specific sectors and also see how especially vulnerable people can get better access and to skills and education. And this is also important for us, that this will be co-developed with the communities there, or with educators, with unions, with other civil society actors, and also with local national authorities. Then also important is for us is that the education and skills need to also include awareness on how the green transition impact those communities and how they can access support. So with a focus on especially the marginalized groups and minority ethnic communities living in those areas. From a union perspective, which we're also supporting, is of course also this kind of guaranteeing also the right to employee training, so that every worker has also the right and that they can access those training that they need for the transition, and also giving them the opportunity that have this. And I think this is also very important for the social acceptance of the green transition, because it's also scary if you feel like, oh, I might lose my job. So there need to be a certain legal framework and also the backup that, okay, no worries, you will not lose your job. You will have hopefully even a better job. And And those skills that we need also need to match with the current strategies that we have on the EU level, such as the industrial strategy, etc. And this all needs, of course, a lot of funding. So we need to heavily invest in skills, training, and learning to create these opportunities that I mentioned before. I mean, this will make the transition possible in the first place, and this will also help to facilitate a fair transition. But also, as Barbara said, invest in education, adult learning strategies, awareness raising, to also equip future generations to be then able to equip them with the knowledge and the capacities to tackle the environmental crisis and all the other crises that are integrated to this. And I think I really like the term long life learning, because that's essentially it, what we need to invest in.
Thank you very much, and especially for the focus on lifelong learning, belonging to the lifelong learning platform. This is certainly appreciated. There was something that you said at some point, that is that we need to look at how the focus on green skills and on the green transition impacts communities. And this is a very big topic. Perhaps you just open a little window on this topic, but maybe this is something that we can keep on discussing later on EPALE, on the platform, after this conversation that we're having. And speaking on EPALE and the platform, I wanted to read out one of the comments that we had already in our discussion. A comment by the user Veronica that says that adult education can do so much, accompanying those who are less accustomed or less informed to a cultural change towards a more sustainable model. This, for me, embodies pretty much what I wanted to bring to the table with this discussion, and it's a formidable link to the next question that I have for Barbara. So, Barbara, what role do you see for adult learning in fostering green skills?
Okay, this is an essential aspect to bring in the education. I mean, adults are key also in terms of opening future perspectives to younger generations. Today, we see a lot of young people who are showing great concern about environment, as they believe that their future is at stake. We have a reversal perspective from the side of adults. I mean, how adults are taking this challenge. I mean, the challenge of climate change and all the different challenges connected to it strongly affects the future that young people will face. So the topic of being aware of this responsibility is absolutely essential, in my opinion. But as a whole, I mean, the decisions that we are taking now will affect the future. So in order to develop these aspects, also awareness raising campaigns are needed, or not just as a promotional campaign, but in the forms of correct training, not just focusing on specific aspects, as I was saying before, technical aspects, but also on those transversal skills that enable people to activate the proper attitudes, develop the proper attitudes to face the different challenges connected to sustainability. And I would like to underline that the vision of green skills would inevitably create gender disparities as well. If we just consider green skills as something related to technical jobs. Nowadays, if we think of the women who are actually working in technical jobs, let's say, are having technical positions, or in the areas I was mentioning before, I'm afraid we leave a big portion of the population behind, while we need to have them all on board. So it's not just a matter of enhancing the position of women in STEMs or in green skills. It's enhancing the entire society to collaborate all together. You were speaking of communities before. They are key. Everybody must be on board. So also in the when we think of the whole school approach, which has been debated quite a lot in our working group, I think it's very important that we understand the role of the education in a lifelong learning perspective and towards the communities surrounding the educational places.
Yes, absolutely. I can certainly subscribe to the point of view that calls for a more thorough understanding of the social impact that this focus on green skills we're having. But both of you have mentioned that green skills as technical skills are perhaps not enough. They do not go far enough, and they risk being a narrow vision. And you both mentioned competencies, knowledge, attitudes, maybe mindsets even, as complementary to green skills. As lifelong learning platform, this is something that we hold very dear. And in some way, we find ourselves advocating for a more holistic approach to education and training. And crucially to the transitions, the twin transitions, the green and the digital one. Some sort of an approach that promotes the key transversal competencies on top of technical skills anticipated by the market, by the job market. I don't know, Katie, is this something that aligns with the priorities of the environment stakeholders? How do you see the role of key competencies for lifelong learning in this scenario?
Thanks, Andrea, for the question. We do strongly agree with the statement. And also, as you said, and as Barbara already said, we believe that in general, we need a more holistic understanding of the just transition, and also including sectors such as care and education. Because, I mean, she and Barbara already hinted towards, but many understand green or sustainable jobs only related to those more technical skills sectors such as energy efficiency, mobility, agriculture, environmental management. And unfortunately, also that's my impression, the Commission or the EU institution also have a quite narrow focus on the just transition on those sectors as well. Besides, there's also not sufficient money allocated to those. But most of those workers in these industries are men. So, for example, only 22% of transport workers are women, 32% for energy, and only 10% of construction workers are female. So that's why actually just transition focusing only on those high polluting sectors in certain regions, which are important, of course. But if we only focus on them, we might risk that we exacerbate existing gender inequalities. And actually, when it comes to the SDGs, Europe is below the gender equality indicator. So there's also still some room. So that's why we advocate broadening the understanding of jobs and employment beyond those green sectors, and also including all jobs that in the essence contribute to the well-being of people and planet. And then here I'm thinking particularly in the low-carbon jobs in the care sector and education. So care is still highly undervalued and under-recognized in our societies, and they really need to put both the formal and the informal care we need to put into the center of our economies, in our opinion. But as you said, this requires going beyond technical skills and also include competencies. And so-called, so Barbara already said, this is transversal skills. So what do we mean by this? We need competencies, we need skills that can be transferable, but also soft skills such as communication, critical thinking, learning to learn, teamwork, etc. I think these are also all competencies that we think are important to also face the challenges that we see, I think we also need kind of innovative and new approaches. And I always think of this Venn diagram. If you think about sustainability, that's really about the environmental, the social, and the economic aspect going together. And I think the recent protests, but also backlash towards environmental policies, again, just shows how important the social justice aspect is. And I think education here, as we said before, has really a key a role to play to maybe also increase the acceptance and the willingness for the green transition.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of meat to digest in a way. There was, key competence, of course, I seem to understand that in both your opinions are key to the just transition and to a green and just transition. And we always go back to the Council recommendations on key competences for lifelong learning that dates back to 2018, but it's so relevant. And I can see from your words that especially communication, problem solving, critical thinking, but also learning to learn. We always play on this one as being one of the most important, regardless the sector, as you said. There was a comment on EPALE before we started this discussion, this conversation that we're having, that for me was very meaningful because it was hinting at a specific sector, if you wish. Colleagues put it below us. It's a comment by Vislana that says, educating adults about a balanced approach to nutrition certainly implies providing information, but it can only be effective in the atmosphere of an aware and engaged community. So we again go back to the impact that this focus on green skills is having on communities. And you both mentioned the gender gap, which is apparent in pretty much every domain of our living. But it feels like an important point that maybe we will tackle in another discussion. It deserves its own space, especially in the context of adult learning. So Barbara, let me turn to you. Because we were talking about competences, attitude, mindsets, knowledge, and of course, green skills, what is the connection between all of those on the one hand, and how can they contribute to active citizenship on the other one?
That's an interesting question. I would like to just mention one thing that I wanted to mention before already. An important aspect is training the trainers or the teachers inside the big pan, let's say, of adult learning. We should consider the professional development of teachers and trainers who are absolutely key to activate, to lever the change towards more sustainable societies. I'm mentioning sustainable societies because I think that we should consider all the three aspects that Katie was already mentioning before. We are not talking just about environmental sustainability, but also about economic sustainability and social sustainability. And perhaps there, exactly from this point, come a lot of barriers which are needed we need to overcome. I mean, as Katie was mentioning before, the people are sometimes afraid of losing their jobs. So because of the green transition, and this is something we need absolutely to overcome. This affects a large number of adults. More adults than young people, obviously. So coming to your question related to citizenship, I just would like to connect it to what I was saying right now, because if we think that we need to activate green skills, competencies, and attitudes to facilitate sustainable decision-making at work and also in our lives, this goes directly to the topic of active citizenship, because I don't make a decision environmentally friendly only at work because I have a so-called green job. I need to activate a mindset, a new mindset, which finds absolutely normal to activate green attitudes, green values, a green mindset. So it should be something that is innerly inner to the individual, and this helps people to make different choices in their lives. So, and this is part of active citizenship. I would like to make an example from a project related to food, by the way. We were talking about food waste prevention in a project, and we trained a lot of young and adult people attending the courses for job positions in the restaurant sector. However, we used the same topic and as an active citizenship topic to propose to young people in schools related to healthy diets. So healthy diets and food waste reduction was a new proposed topic inside the course of active citizenship, and it was very successful because it activated also ideas about how to save material in the laboratories for mechanics, for instance. How can we spare material in other laboratories that we are holding in completely different sectors? This is important. Food is sometimes the good driver to activate this change of mindset, activate also active citizenship. Yeah. So this is what I would like to propose. Actually, I think that this is very important in order to make people understand how, the role that they can play in changing things in a greener way, and also feeling less helpless in front of big challenges like climate change.
Yeah. Sometimes we do feel helpless, especially as individuals, especially in a more and more atomized society. But at the same time, I feel like we're only scratching the surface. This is really a big topic, and while we're only again seeing the tip of it, somehow I see a red thread between it all, between all the little points that we're touching upon, and that is that communities and the social impact of the green transition and the focus on green skills is something that we want to look at more thoroughly while moving forward as a European Union, while moving towards the future. So Katie, speaking of the EU, what is, in your opinion, the main element to change or implement or do differently in the EU as we are right now to make the green transition a just transition for everyone?
Thanks, Andrea. The question is a bit of a tough cookie. I think there's no one size fits all change when it comes to advancing the just transition. At the EU level, as we have like many different aspects that we need to take into account, such as EU resource reduction targets, but also progressive tax reform of the EU fiscal rules, promoting workers' participation, green skills, also the whole aspect about collective bargaining and how we can actually strengthen participation from civil society and other partners, and then also the need to actually reduce the harmful or investments in harmful subsidies or harmful activities that we still see. But we believe that policy coordination and coherence should be very key in this aspect. And you're also part of the EU Just Transition Alliance, and what they have been proposing is the establishment of a Just Transition observatory together with the Just Transition Directive for the world of work. And the aim of this observatory would be exactly to ensure coherence and coordination, so to oversee that there's a certain policy coordination across member states, and that the economic, environmental, and also social dimensions of the green transition are addressed at the same time. So yeah, that's why I think this is actually quite a good tool that we're also supporting as EEB, that could maybe, it will be not the only game changer, but it could be at least an important tool to ensuring the policy coherence.
Yeah, and as you said, we're also part of the Just Transition Alliance, so this really resonates with us. I think as civil society, we have common objectives, and the fact that you mentioned more participation of civil society organizations in decision making, this is one of our points. And yet here we are after our discussion. I wanted to take perhaps one comment that just arrived live. I will read it out. It is by the user Kadri, and say that they're involved in teaching green skills and training. And apparently, it's a surprise that the majority of teachers and trainers today do not take into account the latest science findings in educational psychology. Which ultimately results into the majority of teachers teaching in a way that does not actually support the way the human brain learns, or at least it does in ineffective ways. So we go back to the topic of training the trainers or the teachers to teach in an effective way. This can be this is applicable in a very wide sense, if you want, not only related to green skills, but perhaps if you want to move beyond technical skills, teaching competences and aptitudes, it's a different matter. I don't know if any of you would like to comment on this and see to share your perspective on how to make the teaching profession more effective.
Shall I start? Maybe.
Please.
Go. Please start.
Okay. Now, I think there are different levels to answer this question, which is multifaceted. I think on the one hand, we have teaching or activating green skills in learners at large. And we need to understand what the role of teachers and trainers is with this respect. Because I think we should also talk about learning settings. So formal, non-formal, informal learning settings, which are, they should be complementary to each other. As we are speaking of lifelong learning, we should also consider the different learning settings where individuals can develop their green skills and green competencies. And this is one important aspect. So coming to the educational aspect, first of all, we should consider how and if and how teachers and trainers are ready to face this task. So this is one important question. Apparently, they face this challenge, let's say, in a theoretical way. Whereas when we deal with environmental sustainability, with economic issues related to environmental sustainability, etc., they have a very practical and tangible aspect to underline. So I think the practical aspect, the approach, like a project-oriented approach, dealing with a tangible challenge, and you build around that challenge a project. You make people aware, you provide scientific evidence, you provide different perspectives. You can negotiate the different points of view, etc., etc., etc. So we need a more practical approach, I would say, not just theoretical. Otherwise, it remains like in the air, not something that you live every day in your life.
Yeah. Practical approach. I wonder if it goes back to learning settings and how non-formal and informal learning environments can also support the development of green skills and green competencies. Katie, anything to add to what Barbara just said?
Yeah, that's not my expertise, but I was actually listening to a podcast from a woman called Marina Weismann. She was a former politician as well in Germany. Now she's working mainly with schools from a democratic aspect. And I also found it quite interesting because she was also saying that at least in Germany, how the school days are structured and the way they teach is still from the Prussian times. So, for example, school starts very early, although we know that it's actually too early for kids to learn well. So why don't we start a bit later? And she has also quite radical reforms in terms of like also enhancing the participation of kids to also discuss what kind of topics they interest them. And she was also criticizing a bit the way of, okay, you have a curriculum that was made 5 years ago, and then you do a certain test at the end. And I think this also matches a bit with the discussion with what Katri mentioned in her comments. So I think it also needs to go together with some sort of like reform of the whole education system, adapting it more to the psychological or the results from psychological research. But then also, if I think about the digitalization, I think this also, at least in Germany, not really matched well, and probably also some of the green skills and competencies that we mention now are not also fully implemented in the school curricula yet. So this should also be then also part of this reform process.
Yes, definitely. You might not know this, but at the Lifelong Learning platform, one of the things we always advocate for is a learner-centered approach, where learning is tailored to the learner's needs, and they get to have a say in the definition of what they're learning, so their curriculum, how they're learning, so the pedagogies around them, where they're learning, so the environments where they actually learn, and how they are assessed. Especially learners' voices in assessment practices has come to rise as one of the key topics in a learner-centered education. I wanted to read one last comment from YouTube. This is being broadcasted live, and we have a comment from YouTube that says that for the effective green transition, it is also important to win the attention of local governments and get their support for the development of green skills, together with NGOs and so on and so forth. For me, the local dimension is very important. We touched upon it at the very beginning and the impact that it has on local communities. And the idea of gathering as much actors all together, bringing as many actors as possible to the table, it's also an important one. I don't know if you want to briefly comment on this suggestion that we had from YouTube. Maybe just 1 minute each, if you want. If not, it's fine.
So shall I start, Barbara? I think this is a very important point. And I think, indeed, Andrea, we already mentioned in the beginning, we really need a good level of participation, and there's also this ladder of participation, so you can have different levels, and it's a different thing if you just say, okay, here's a form that you can fill out. But I think, what we really need is those to create those spaces where different people can really also discuss with each other and voice their concerns. I know that some local governments also do this kind of like citizen dialogues, and then they're always a bit disappointed that no one attend. So that's why I think it's also important to then create the right conditions that you can participate. So maybe 7 o'clock in the evening might then not be possible for people who have care duties, for example. So yeah, how do you create those different spaces where you also make sure there's not only a certain part of society that can actually participate, and then yeah, maybe there might be also other forms, or using some of the digital tools that we have to also engage with certain groups also. And I think about young people, you might not reach them with like having a in-person meeting, but you might reach them on TikTok, even though you're not super comfortable with it. But I think you need to be really creative in how to meaningful engage citizens, and not just have it as a tick box exercise.
Barbara.
Yeah, actually, how to engage governments. I would start from the local dimension, definitely, because it's the closer to the communities. And I would also try to connect the educational places like the schools, vocational education and training schools, etc., with local governments and other stakeholders on the local level. Because if they all join their strengths, their efforts, they can perhaps then push further up the needs. So it's very important to create a real community which encompasses all different segments of the local population and of the different roles. So I would definitely start from this. And I would emphasize the role that sometimes schools can play in getting together all the different stakeholders to have a common feeling, a common way of facing the same challenge.
Thank you very much, Barbara. This is a formidable assist for me, because in the past, the Lifelong Learning Platform, with the support of CEDEFOP, so the EU agency for vocational training, we've been reimagining a little bit the role of schools in the local community. And we've been labeling it as lifelong learning community centers. That is an approach that draws from the whole school approach, but that transforms schools from just classrooms to a hub for learning for the whole community, really, including adults, of course, and including with non-formal and informal pedagogies. For us, this is a strong point to push on if we want to reimagine a little bit the way we teach and the way we learn. And as for the local governments, well, we all know that education is not an EU competence; it's a competence of member states. But even more so, in a lot of member states in the EU, education is a regional competence. So definitely trying to have more participation in the local level for me, and then moving up the ladder, as you said, it's something that is worth exploring, if not of crucial importance. Thank you very much for staying with us for the past 44 minutes. It's been very enriching. I really have the feeling that we only scratched the surface. I would like to propose to the EPALE colleagues maybe to have a dozen new webinars on this and online discussions, because we really only just opened the famous Pandora box. And if you want to continue looking into this box, I invite you to join the written discussion on EPALE for the whole day. This is not going to stop while we stop chatting, but indeed it will continue in a written form on the platform. So stay with us because we will engage with you, trying to share resources, maybe tips and tricks on how to foster green skills and perhaps moving beyond them in adult learning and education. So once again, thank you very much to both Katie and Barbara.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much. And I will read you online on EPALE. Goodbye.
Bye. Have a good day.